Jay-Z, Linkin Park. Two of the world's biggest stars get together to create Collision Course. A groundbreaking collaboration of their biggest songs.
It starts with 99 problems, but a bitch ain't one.
Jay-Z and Linkin Park, Collision Course. In store now.
You know, one of my favorite things to do when it comes to music is to listen to shit that almost no one remembers, or at the very least is faded from memory. I mean, the fact that nu metal is literally a part of my life at this point should be proof of that, but I don't know, something about finding good music that warrants almost no current discussion is intriguing to me. Like, yeah, you can go on and on about how that one Van Halen record is quite dandy, and like, I mean, everyone knows that. Everyone knows that Van Halen rocks, well, minus this at least. But the goal of my channel isn't primarily to validate a popular opinion, because I am very aware that my musical taste is rather eclectic. In fact, I have multiple records from artists that would have any proper music critic revoking me of my music fan pass. That's not to say that I'll never make a video on a record that is universally known. Hell, I even have some in the woodworks at the moment. But I mean, listening to these records over the years has made me want to talk about them, and maybe even get more people into said music. Basically, let me talk about my 2000s trash, damn. Now, the record I'll be talking about today isn't really forgotten, at least completely. However, it has faded out of the public consciousness, so I'm bringing that shit back.
Can I get an encore? Do you want more? Cook and roll with the Brooklyn boys. So for one last time, I need y'all to roll.
Released in 2004, Collision Course was the love child of MTV, Jay-Z, and Linkin Park. But don't ask about the child support though. This record has always been a little interesting piece of history for how crazy it seems that like it would even become a thing to begin with, and I feel like talking about it, so just like the status of my life, let's go back to the early 2000s. Linkin Park was one of the biggest bands of this time period, being one of the best-selling bands in not just nu metal, but also of all time. Hybrid Theory was literally inescapable, with songs like In the End, Crawling, and One Step Closer playing on not just MTV in heavy rotation, but on the radio as well. It showed that nu metal was not only still very much alive, but here to stay. For a couple more years, but regardless, this wouldn't even be the end of Linkin Park's success, as their follow-up to Hybrid Theory, Meteora, was released in 2003. This album would bring upon this cursed world songs like Numb, Faint, and Somewhere I Belong. Yeah, I'm starting to think that Linkin Park was a big deal back in the day. Their music honestly really holds up, especially with Chester Bennington's powerful, emotional voice, and when juxtaposed with Mike Shinoda's rapping, it automatically gives them a great dynamic. That's not to undersell the other members, with Brad Delson being a great guitarist who knows how to add crunch and distortion to his playing, and Joe Hahn's effects single-handedly made a lot of this group's early material. But now I gotta talk about someone who you could either refer to as a businessman or a
businessman. I keep you fresher than the next chick. No need for you to ever sweat the next chick. With speed, I make the best chick see the exit. Indeed, you gotta know you're thoroughly respected by me.
Jay-Z is one of the best rappers alive. Thank you, I appreciate people praising my opinions. Joking aside though, Jay is single-handedly one of the most successful rappers in the game and one of my personal favorites. He's the first rapper to become a billionaire, and the first one to list off things that scare me.
Sasquatch, Godzilla, King Kong, Loch Ness, Goblin, Ghoul, a zombie with no conscience, Dracula, Mothman, Dragon, Bacillus.
He pretty much deserves all the praise he usually gets. His story is forever cemented in hip-hop, his field still going to be the most notable, and his lyricism and flow were unlike any other. Even if you don't personally consider Jay the GOAT, you gotta at least respect him for what he's done. And up to 2004, he had released 8 studio albums, all of which were pretty fucking successful. Hard Knock Life and the Black Album being tied for my favorites personally. So not even a decade into his career, Jay could reasonably be called a veteran in hip-hop. And finally, we get to the topic of the hour. In 2004, MTV would contact Jay-Z about collaborating on a record involving mashups with different acts, and Jay's choice of band was Linkin Park, resulting in Collision Course.
I ordered a Frappuccino. Where's my fucking Frappuccino? Alright, let's do this.
When I pretend.
Though before we talk about the record proper, I do want to bring attention to this album cover. MTV Ultimate Mashups presents Collision Course. I mean, when I saw that, I thought there would be multiple different mashup EPs that MTV helped create, but this seems to be the only one that they've ever done. So sadly, there is no 50 Cent and Incubus EP. Now, this isn't the first time a new metal band has collaborated with an actual rapper. The first example I can think of is Korn's Children of the Corn from Fall the Leader, which features Ice Cube, to which Korn, or more accurately Head and Monkey, would return the favor on Cube's album with Fuck Dying. Plus the collaboration with Slim Kid 3 on Farside on the track Cameltosis. Those aren't even the only examples, as a year later, Limp Bizkit would do a song with Method Man called End Together Now. And a year later, they would collaborate on Rollin' Urban Assault Vehicle alongside Redman and DMX. Oh, and Reveille did a song with Be Real, but I highly doubt most of you will know what Reveille is, because you'll be. However, this is the first time where they did a whole project together. But what exactly is on this record? Well, it doesn't really feature any new music. It's 6 tracks of Linkin Park songs mixed with Jay-Z songs, those being Dirt Off Your Shoulder with Lying From You, Big Pimpin' with Paper Cut, What? Yes, that's what I'm calling it, with Faint, Numb with Encore, Izzo with In the End, and finally, 99 Problems with Points of Authority and One Step Closer. Yeah, upon hearing that, you might assume that these songs feel weird with each other, and we'll actually talk about that in a bit, but I do want to make it clear, they did not have to go this hard in making some of these songs fit with each other, at least from a sonic level at least. Some of these songs musically fit really well together, and they tend to be the strongest songs on the record. The best mashups are the ones with plenty of presence from both songs. Dirt Off Your Shoulder / Lying From You incorporates the instrumentals from both songs at certain points, and it makes it weirdly genius in a sense. What? / Faint also does the same thing and works for similar reasons. Plus the beat to Faint is perfect for rapping over, so when it's Jay-Z doing so, you know it's good. It's worth knowing that some of the vocals on this EP were re-recorded to fit the vibes of the songs, and in case of What? / Faint, it works fantastically. But above all, the best song in my opinion is 99 Points of Steps Closer. Yes, that's what I'm calling it. The way the instrumentals switch from Points of Authority to One Step Closer is fucking sick, and I even like how Mike does his own version of Jay-Z's first verse. It just adds a little detail that I think someone would probably glance over. It may sound like a mess given that it's the only mashup on this record with 3 songs, but trust me, it works musically better than you might imagine.
99 problems with a bitch ain't one. If you having girl problems, I feel bad for you, son. I got 99 problems with a bitch ain't one.
Though of course, I can't mention this record without talking about the only single, Numb / Encore. This mashup is actually one of the more unique with how it remakes the instrumentals and then where it fits as both a Linkin Park song and a Jay-Z song. It also gives the track a more grand feel to it, really emphasizing the words of Jay-Z's verses, and by the time it gets to Chester's parts, the song has already built a strong emotion to where it arguably hits better than in the original.
I came, I saw, I conquer. For record sales, sold out concerts. So motherfucker, if you want this encore, I need you to scream till your lungs are sore. Come on.
I'm tired of being what you want me to be. Feeling so faithless, lost under the surface.
It's also the only time where Kanye appears on the Linkin Park song. Just thought I'd mention that. But what about the other 2 songs that I haven't mentioned? Well, they're probably the weakest songs. They aren't unlistenable at all, in fact, they're pretty good if you're just listening to the record, but the issues come in when they don't really try to fit together, but rather just appear over the beats to the Jay-Z songs. Big Pimpin' / Paper Cut is the first example that comes to mind, cause like, I'm sorry, but how does one do the first verse to Paper Cut over the happy-ass beat to Big fucking Pimpin'? It's not even like the Big Pimpin' beat transfers over to the Paper Cut instrumental at any point, cause it's more like just Mike rapping the verse over the instrumental, and they are quite literally not talking about the same things. Like, one minute you have Mike saying that he's paranoid, looking over his back, and then the other you have Jay-Z rapping about being a pimp. Yeah, Mike, that's great and all, but you might want to take that to the vent chat. And they didn't even have the courtesy of bringing back the UGK feature, which makes me upsetty spaghetti. Hell, they probably should have, because they still leave in this line. No, the fuck there isn't. They are literally not on the song anymore. I don't know, maybe they could have just recorded it to say something like, I don't know, it's just that Jigga Man, Mike, Chester, and LP, or something like that, I don't fucking know. Oh, and don't even get me started on Izzo / The End.
It starts with one thing. I don't know why. It doesn't even matter how hard you try. Keep that in mind. I designed this rhyme to explain in due time.
Though this leads me to the record's biggest and most apparent issue, these songs inherently do not work with each other. This might sound contradictory given what I said earlier, but keep in mind that I said they fit sonically. The musical ideas and the instrumentation are very well done to be sure, but lyrically, these songs do not mesh at all, even on the good mashups. Jay-Z's songs are generally more braggadocious, while Linkin Park's music is generally known for being emotional and based on deep feelings like isolation and depression. As such, it's really hard to ignore how disjointed this record feels from the very word go. Though, I mean, I guess it doesn't really have to be a bad thing on its own. I mean, when you really think about it, there are tons of mashups people do on YouTube, and most of the time, you'll find that most of them don't really fit together as songs like lyrically. Hell, I've done mashups like that to lead up to this video. There are even some mashups that work due to the person in question reworking them into something new, like this one I found of I Spy and I Write Sins Not Tragedies.
I spy with my little light. I spy with my little light. Oh, I spy with my little light. I spy with my little light. Oh,
Even though they're about completely different things, they just click. So ultimately, I do really enjoy this record, not only because of my love for both Jay and Linkin Park's music, but also because I just love that this EP exists. I like how it tries everything in its power to not work, but ironically makes it work in that very same way. That's why I refer to this EP as a beautiful, charming mess. It is unbelievably messy, but I love it despite that. Everything you liked about Linkin Park and Jay-Z is on this record, and I'd say it's an interesting listen for anyone who hasn't heard it before. Probably not as a repeated listen, but just as a curiosity, and if you like it, then I wouldn't be surprised. Guess the name Collision Course suits it just fine. It is a collision of things. Plus, this record was definitely a fun time for Mike Shinoda, since he is the rapper of Linkin Park, so it was probably an honor to work with one of hip-hop's biggest figures. He even mentioned in December 2004, "To me, Collision Course is a landmark album because it's a first. Two multi-platinum artists getting together, using their original masters and new performances and production to create an album of mashups. That's something that's never been done before. I think Jay-Z is an exceptional artist, and it was a real treat for me to be able to sit in the producer's chair for this project." This record was released alongside a DVD which included the mashups being performed live, as well as a short filming of the recording process, and it's clear to see that these guys had a lot of fun working together. Collision Course would go on to reach number 1 on the Billboard 200 charts, and Numb/Encore would peak at number 20 on the Billboard Hot 100. And this isn't even the end of the story between Linkin Park and Jay-Z, because Jay would later go on to be the executive producer of The Rising Tide, the debut album of Mike Shinoda's solo project Fort Minor. This album probably deserves its own video because it slaps like absolute hell, but there's even a song called High Road where Mike refers back to Collision Course.
These people are running off at the mouth, trying to convince me that I'm running on empty, trying to convince themselves that their record with Jay was a fluke, that the record that I'm making is a mistake, and I can't take this.
But yeah, this record was definitely one that was weird, but also quite fascinating at the same time, and not gonna lie, I wouldn't mind seeing a modern equivalent to this record being done, though I doubt it, because the 2000s was awesome, and the 2020s can go suck a dick through a straw.
I came, I saw, I conquered. Like yourself, sold out concerts.